Hey guys, Johnnie Ferro here, and welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of Musician Kitchen. And as I said in my last video, I'm going to be doing kind of a question and answer video here. I had, last week I put a video up and just asked what you guys want to know. So I'm going to give you the answers to your questions, and these are regarding my cooking background, my music background, my personal background, just, you know, free-for-all, right? So I actually have in front of me here the questions that were asked. So I'm just going to go down the list. So first we had acrylic painting with Julie E. Wanted to know, well, she said, can't wait to find out how you got into cooking, what clubs rocked at, and bands you've played with. So as far as getting into cooking, that's really been a lifelong thing. Everyone in my family cooks pretty much. You know, my mom definitely cooks a lot. My dad cooks. Both my step-parents cook. My grandparents both cooked. My Nana Rita cooked. Actually, I'm going to be doing a recipe of hers this season. Yeah, so I just kind of have been all around it, and growing up, I was also raised to be very self-sufficient. Although I will tell you a funny story of the first memory I have of cooking. It's pretty epic. So when I was a kid, and this may have been the first time I realized I had something to learn, right? My sister was watching me, and I was making boxed macaroni and cheese for myself, right? So I boiled the noodles, no problem there. But then I didn't drain them before throwing in the cheese and the milk and yeah, the cheese and the milk and the butter. So literally it was like this really bland, vaguely cheesy soup with some noodles in it. Anyway, it was a mess and it was hilarious. But yeah, growing up, you know, I was just around it. I liked to help in the kitchen once in a while. Like I'd help my dad cook, I'd help my mom cook. And then when I was in high school, I actually I was a line cook. Well, I started out as like a dishwasher and then a prep cook, worked my way up to being a line cook. And this was at a restaurant called Friendly's, which is a Northeast restaurant chain. For anyone that's in the Northeast, you may have heard of it. So yeah, I worked outside of Buffalo, where I'm from, at Friendly's, and it was actually a great experience just learning to rapid fire get products in the kitchen. It was actually a lot of fun. And then after Friendly's, I ended up working at an incredible grocery store chain up in the Western New York area in Buffalo. Actually, that you may have heard of, called Wegmans. They've actually been noted over the last several years as one of the top companies to work for in the entire country. And I can attest, they're a fantastic company. What's interesting about them is that they're a grocery store chain, but the thing that they really are big on is their food culture, and particularly their prepared food culture. Like, not only selling things that are prepared, but educating the people that shop there on how to cook, you know, how to make their own food, and really making sure they understand how to do that for health reasons and just for sufficiency reasons. And I learned a tremendous amount there. I moved my way through. I started out in the deli, which, you know, not too much going on there as far as prepared foods go, but then eventually I worked in their sub shop and their pizza shop. I worked in the seafood department, which was fantastic. Actually, at the busiest store in Buffalo, I worked at the seafood department and learned a lot there. The seafood in that store was right next door to the prepared foods area, and I really learned a lot about just working with the food, you know, and just from the ground up, like as raw material, what differences in types of fish are, what they pair with, that kind of thing, and then making dishes with the stuff as well. And then I did eventually work in the actual prepared foods area. And at that time, I was working at a store in Amherst, New York, which is outside of Buffalo, and it's on Niagara Falls Boulevard. I think the store is still there to this day. And I actually worked there in prepared foods, and they actually let me do a little bit of cooking, like demo cooking, right? So I had this cook station, and I would, you know, make steaks or make vegetables, whatever the dish was, and there would be like a cold case next to me of all the product, and I would regularly sell that thing out, right? And I was just having fun talking to people. I was enjoying myself learning about the product, and then making it and letting people sample it, and then of course they wanted to make it and they bought it, and anyway, it was just a lot of fun. And then from there I just kind of kept cooking. I mean, throughout my life since then, I've done catering gigs here and there. Not that I don't really do those anymore, but I have done some catering gigs. I actually catered a friend's wedding back in 2008, I think, which was fantastic, a lot of fun. You know, I've done some hors d'oeuvre catering stuff, and generally just around the house, I'm the guy that cooks. So, and then to answer, Julie, your other questions, clubs I've rocked at, bands I've played with. Clubs I've played at, I mean, mostly small stuff. The biggest deal, I think, is I played the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano, which a lot of national acts play through there. Also played a room a place called the Boiler Room in Temecula. That was a cool show in 2015 because I was opening for Eve 6 for that show, and that was just a lot of fun. Really great crowd, really happening. Back in the day, I mean, the bands I've played with, my own bands, have been like, you know, obviously Johnnie Ferro. No Convention was a band that I had for a while. I was also in a band called Toy Box Heroes back when I was in Buffalo, and that was back in 2005 to 2006. That was a cover band. We did a lot of 80s hair metal cover kind of things, like Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, that kind of stuff. Again, just a really incredible, fun band. I was in one called Reverse Vector that I started for, was in that for a while. There was one called the Phoenix Resistance. Yeah, then I've also played with Dee Dee O'Malley and her band. She's a fairly well-known songwriter and singer, and also she's written some plays, some musicals, and one of which is, I think, in the process of getting onto Broadway. I've worked with Jeannie Diva and played in her band. She's passed away since, but she was my vocal coach, and I was in her band for a minute. And then I also had a really killer experience. I wouldn't call it being in the band, because I totally wasn't, but when recording, there's a song called Hair of the Dog by a band called Nazareth. And a lot of people know this song from the Guns N' Roses cover of it that they did back in 1993. But the guy that wrote that song, the guitarist from Nazareth, Manny Charlton, actually did a re-recording of it back in 2012 in the same studio where I did, where I did my solo album, my first solo album. And long story short, just through conversations with the guy that ran the studio, turns out they needed a singer to do that song. Manny needed a singer, and I ended up doing the lead vocal on the Hair of the Dog remake by the guy that wrote the song and produced the song originally. So that was a lot of fun too. So yeah, I hope again that answers your question. I'm gonna move on here to Prophetess Fry. How did you get involved in music? And technically, the answer to that question really is that when I was probably 3 years old, my dad had this, just whatever acoustic guitar that he just had around the house, probably like $100 guitar, and I saw it and I was just kind of interested in it. That was really the beginning, and then growing up, I sang in my church choir, the church that I went to as a kid, and then at 11 years old, I started playing my aunt actually played guitar for her church, and she just started teaching me the music just to learn some chords and things, and that was the first way that I actually really started working with music and getting into it. And then I just kind of always worked on like singing and things like that on my own. But yeah, that was the genesis of my music career, you could say. And now let's see, Becky Hardwick, what got you started in cooking? I like to eat. To be honest, I like food and I like a lot of it. And especially like when I was growing up, a lot of people don't know this. I was very overweight. I was actually, at one point, I weighed almost 300 pounds, which even for my height was really not a healthy weight, and none of it was muscle, I assure you. But there was a bit of a pragmatic aspect to it, is that I like to eat a lot, and it's a lot cheaper to eat a lot if you make your own food. But also, too, I don't know, I really, just the interest and the enthusiasm that my family had for it. We were all, and my sisters are the same way, they all cook. We were just raised to be very self-sufficient, so that was how that began. And then, okay, let's see, what came first, the music or the cooking? And that would be cooking, actually, I don't know. Technically, the music might have, because, like I said, I was like 3 when I first started to really, have any kind of attention or interest in the guitar. But on a level of doing, I would say cooking probably did, just by default. Just little things like making scrambled eggs and French toast for breakfast and things like that. But that was probably the first thing, but not by much, because I also started singing very young. So, and then Becky also asks, my absolute favorite thing to cook. That is really hard to say, because I like to cook so many things. I will say I've been really enjoying my chicken cacciatore recipe lately. That's a fun recipe. It's just a really hearty recipe, and it's just a lot of fun to make. And it just puts a smile on people's face, which I like. Other than that, I also really like making homemade hamburgers, just because I like having fun doing different things with burgers. I'm actually going to get into, planning to get into a burger recipe or two for this next season here. So I have some really cool kind of inventive things that I do with them. But really anything. I'm interested in just cooking in general. And the one thing I will say is that I definitely prefer stovetop cooking versus baking or, roasting and that kind of stuff. Only because I like a very active process. I like to move around a lot. I like to keep the energy high, and I like to experiment. It's a lot easier to do that on the stovetop than it is with the oven. And then last thing Becky asked was, I'm sure your family reaps the benefits. What is their favorite? I would have to say tacos. My wife for sure especially really likes my tacos. She's a taco nut and my tacos are legit. So yeah, tacos all the way. And yeah, they definitely reap the benefits. I cook for them pretty much every day and I don't receive too many complaints. All right, and then Janice Pittman asked, also, have you written any songs for other bands? Good question. Not that I can think of, but that's something I'm kind of getting into now as we speak, which is why it's a really good question. Working with, well, on my own, but also collaborating with other writers to write things to pitch, and that is including pitching to other artists to use the music. I'm actually working on a song right now with a collaborator that we're potentially going to be, seeing if we can get into Jimmy Buffett's people, for example. Is just one that I happen to be working on right now. So not something that's happened other than like bands I've been in that maybe continued using the song after I wasn't in the band, although that may have happened once. But other than that, nope, that would be a new thing for me, but something I'm actually working on right now. And then let's see, Jared Richardson asked me a question that I'm pretty sure he's not expecting me to answer, but I'm going to answer it. He said, what do you think is the meaning of life? And the answer to that is to communicate. Plain and simple. Everything else is incidental, but at the end of the day, it's to communicate and to create an effect. So there you go, Jared. Jerry Peter asked, what bands have you been in and how many? Also, how did you meet Marcy? So, number of bands I've been in, boy, I don't know, 7, 8 actual bands, but it's tough to say because I've been in a bunch of one-off things or like guested with bands. And, like I did an album with a band called Highland Kites and I was just kind of on, I was with them, but then I was on for that album, then I wasn't. Gosh, but yeah, I would say like probably 7 or 8 that I would say that I was like in, including my own solo projects. And then, as far as how I met Marcy, we actually, we were friends on social media just because we ran in kind of the same circles. And back in 2012, she actually just reached out to me. She was looking for musicians to play an art show that she was putting on, and she reached out, and I said, yeah, sure, of course, And that was how we officially met, was I played one of her art shows, and that was the beginning. All right, and then finally, from Mr. L. Spicy, my main man who's been following me on my musician channel for a while as well, he said, how do you maintain your serenity dealing with this pandemic and also being a father, husband, and friend? How do you balance it out and keep time for everyone, including yourself? That is a fantastic question. And by the way, that's a question that kind of comes with a built-in acknowledgement, and I really appreciate that, Spicy, that you have the viewpoint that I handle those things well, because it's definitely not easy, and it really means a lot that shows that, I'm handling things all right. Because there is a lot going on. There's the pandemic. My wife, Mixed Media Girl, obviously has a lot going on with her businesses, and I am involved in those businesses. We do have a daughter. I do have friends that I maintain contact with. Obviously, I have my parents and my family, and I maintain contact. A couple things. It's really, number one, don't ever forget to breathe. Breathing is important. And I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but there have literally been times when I've been so busy that I'm like, I find myself taking less breaths and like holding my breath. And I'm like, dude, breathe, Keeping a schedule, keeping organized and keeping a schedule is really key. Google Docs and Google Calendar are a big part of my organization, and that's a little bit I know it's a little bit vanilla and mundane of an answer, but it's true. Just maintaining a calendar makes a huge difference in making sure I can do everything and making sure there's always blocks of time throughout the week for my family. Blocking out when I have a collaboration, blocking out when I'm filming an episode, or whatever. It's all blocked out. And just really also doing a battle plan every day, like a list of things. Like every day I list out, what am I doing today? These are the priorities. This is what I'm getting done. So just taking the time to do those things is really, really, really important. And the other thing too is just stay loose, and have fun. And sometimes you do need to withdraw a little bit, like go take a walk for 20, 30 minutes or something, and then come back to what you're doing. It actually can make you work faster and get more done. The other thing too is really working out how to use every minute of my day. Like, for example, you know, if I'm driving somewhere, let's say I'm driving to a gig or I'm driving to a whatever, you know, I'm running an errand for Marcy and I have to drive a little bit. Time in the car can easily become dead time, but I will use that time to make phone calls with Bluetooth, of course, because you shouldn't be hands-free when you drive. But you know, I'll make phone calls. I'll call those are times when I call my family a lot of time. Actually, it's a great time to call my family because, you know, I'm a captive audience for 30 minutes and it's great. I'll use that time to catch up with them. Or sometimes if I'm like trying to get inspiration or ideas for things to do with my music, I'll listen to some different kind of music just to get ideas. You know, I can do vocal warm-ups in the car. That's just one example, but really figuring out a way to make use of every day, every downtime that you possibly could have. I mean, right, just anything you can think of. I don't sit around much, even when it's funny, even when I'm trying to relax and watch movies, you know, I'll be sitting there with my laptop watching the movie, but typing out emails or messages or throwing posts up or editing or whatever, you know, just I use every hour of the day, you know, or most of the hours anyway. At the same time, making sure that you do actually take good care of yourself as well, including getting good sleep, getting good nutrition, that kind of stuff. Obviously that pertains to you, but the better taken care of you are, and the better shape you're in, the more efficiently and effectively you can manage the other aspects of your life. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much all that I had to say. I mean, you guys really covered everywhere that I was going to go. I can't think of anything else. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope this was informative and a little entertaining. I hope you got something out of it. So one other thing that was brought up in the comments from my last video is that you guys wanted to see a shopping list for the next episode in the description of this episode and going forward, like every episode, a shopping list for the next episode, so you guys could cook along with me if you wanted to for each episode, which I thought was a fantastic idea. So in the description below this episode is the recipe, or I'm sorry. So in the description below this episode is the shopping list for the next recipe, and I'm not putting the recipe down there just yet, but I will give you a heads up. It is going to be my Nana Rita's German potato salad, which is freaking incredible. And it's awesome because it's actually my mom's recipe. I've never actually made this. I just remembered it from my childhood. I haven't had it in literally probably a decade or two, right? But I've never forgotten the taste of my Nana's potato salad. She's passed away since 2006, she died, but I've still never forgotten it. And I was talking to my mom, I was like, Mom, does this recipe exist anywhere? She's like, well, you know, me and Nana did actually sit down and do it at one point. Let me see if I can find it. Thank goodness she found it. So as much as you will be learning this recipe, I will also be doing it for the first time on this episode. So it's actually kind of special to me, especially because I loved my Nana very much. She was I was very close to her, and it was tough when she passed, but one of the ways she does live on is through things like this, her recipes, because she was definitely a cook, and she was a fantastic cook. So stay tuned for that. Again, shopping list below. So get all the ingredients ahead of time, and then going back to Tuesdays at noon, continuing on, I will be, you know, putting on that episode and all episodes going forward. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, for being there for the first season, for everyone that's gotten anything out of the episodes and has posted or messaged me about doing the recipes and giving me their feedback. That means a lot, really it does. And also too, in the comments, feel free at any point to drop if there's a recipe you want to see me do. Whether it's something I've done or not, I'm kind of up for whatever. So I have my ideas of things I want to do, but that can always be changed if you guys want to see something. So keep that in mind. Comments below if you got anything you want to know or you want to see. And until next video, guys, I'm Johnnie Ferro. Have an amazing rest of your week. I'll see you later. Mwah.